I am Almira, 35 years old, sitting at my childhood Thanksgiving table with my son Tyler. The whispers have been building all evening. My father Charles suddenly stands face red with rage. He points at the door and shouts, "Leave now," I simply answer, gladly rising with dignity intact. What my family never realized is that they have been living comfortably off my $58 million fortune for years. Before I continue this journey of betrayal and vindication, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever stood up for yourself when others underestimated your worth. My childhood was not extraordinary in any way that would predict my future. We lived in Oak Ridge, a modest town where everyone knew everyone. Our house on Maple Street was comfortable enough with 3 bedrooms and a backyard, where I would spend hours reading under the big oak tree. My father Charles worked as a bank manager and my mother Audrey taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. We were firmly middle class, neither wanting for necessities nor enjoying luxuries. Everything changed when I turned 12. The arguments between my parents had been escalating for months, hushed voices behind closed doors that gradually became shouting matches in the kitchen. I would hide in my room pillow over my ears, pretending I could not hear the word divorce being thrown around like a weapon. When they finally told me they were separating, I was almost relieved. The tension had become unbearable. What I did not expect was how quickly my father would move on. Within 6 months, he had remarried Harriet, a woman from his office with 2 young children of her own, Eleanor, who was 8, and Nathan, who was 10. Suddenly, I had a stepmother and step-siblings I barely knew. My mother and I moved to a small apartment across town. Our standard of living dropped dramatically. The child support checks from my father were inconsistent at best, and my mother took on tutoring jobs after school to make ends meet. I watched her work herself to exhaustion grading papers, late into the night after helping struggling students all afternoon. "Education is the one thing nobody can take from you, Almira," she would tell me. "No matter what happens, if you have knowledge and skills, you can rebuild." I took those words to heart and threw myself into my studies. By high school, I was at the top of my class, working part-time at the local library to save for college. My relationship with my father had become strained and formal. Our mandatory Sunday dinners were exercises in awkward conversation with Harriet, constantly comparing me unfavorably to Eleanor, who was becoming such a proper young lady. My hard work paid off when I received a full scholarship to State University. I was the first in my family to attend college, and even my father seemed impressed, though he quickly attributed my success to having his brains. During my sophomore year, I met Jacob in my economics class. Tall, charismatic, and ambitious, he seemed to have his entire future mapped out. We began dating, and I fell hard. He talked about our future together, the business empire we would build, the places we would see. I believed every word. When I discovered I was pregnant at 21, I was terrified but not despairing. Jacob and I would face this together, adjust our plans, make it work. Except Jacob had other ideas. The day after I told him about the baby, he disappeared. No calls, no texts, nothing. I later learned he had transferred to another university across the country. He left me a single voicemail: "I am not ready for this. Do not try to contact me." The worst was yet to come. 2 months into my pregnancy, my mother was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 4. I watched the woman who had sacrificed everything for me waste away too quickly to even process what was happening. At her funeral, my father stood awkwardly at the back of the room with his new family. He offered stiff condolences and a check that would barely cover 1 month of rent. "You should consider coming home," he said, not meeting my eyes. "This baby situation is unfortunate, but maybe Harriet could help you figure things out." The way he said "figure things out" made it clear he meant adoption or worse. I tore up the check and handed him the pieces. I managed to finish the semester, but taking care of myself during pregnancy while grieving my mother proved too much. I took a leave of absence, intending to return after the baby was born. My son Tyler arrived in the spring, beautiful and perfect, and entirely dependent on me. With my savings dwindling and no support system, I reached out to my father one last time. I still remember sitting in his living room, Tyler asleep in my arms, asking not for handouts but just for a place to stay while I figured out my next steps. "You made your choices," my father said, while Harriet nodded beside him. You chose to get pregnant. You chose to keep it. Now you need to be responsible. Eleanor, now 14, watched from the staircase with curious eyes. Nathan smirked from the couch, clearly enjoying my humiliation. You are a disappointment, Elmira, my father continued. I raised you to be better than this, to be successful. Now look at you, a college dropout with a baby and no husband. A failure. Those words burned into my soul as I gathered my meager belongings and my precious son and walked out of that house. I had no idea then that one day they would be living in a house I paid for, driving cars I purchased, enjoying comforts I provided, all while still seeing me as that same failure. With nowhere else to turn, I packed everything I owned into my beat-up Honda Civic and drove to Portland with my 3-month-old son. The city offered more opportunities than my small hometown, and anonymity seemed appealing after the judgment I had faced. I found a tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, the only place I could afford on my meager savings. The first year was a blur of exhaustion and determination. I took any job I could find that allowed me to keep Tyler with me or worked with my limited childcare options. I stocked shelves at an organic grocery store at 5 in the morning while Tyler slept in his carrier. I answered phones at a dentist office 3 evenings a week when the regular receptionist went home. I delivered food orders on weekends, Tyler strapped to my chest. We lived moment to moment, day to day. There were nights I went to bed hungry so that I could afford diapers. There were mornings I cried in the shower because I was so tired I could barely stand. But whenever I looked at Tyler with his curious eyes and trusting smile, I found the strength to keep going. Everything changed the day I walked into Moonlight Bakery, responding to a handwritten help wanted sign in the window. The owner, Sophia, was a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She took one look at me, exhausted with a baby on my hip, and instead of turning me away, she offered me a chair and a warm cinnamon roll. Eat, she said simply, then we will talk. Sophia hired me to work the morning shift. More importantly, she let me bring Tyler, setting up a playpen in the back office, where he could nap or play while I learned to make pastries and serve customers. She became more than an employer. She became a mentor and friend. This bakery is only open until 3. She told me one day about 6 months after I started working for her. The space sits empty all evening. If you have something you want to work on, some dream you are putting off, you can use the space after hours. I had always been good with computers, and during my brief time in college, I had discovered a talent for coding. In the quiet evenings at the bakery after Tyler was asleep in his playpen, I began to teach myself app development. I had noticed how many small business owners like Sophia struggled with inventory management and customer tracking, using outdated systems or even pen and paper. I started developing a simple user-friendly application specifically designed for small retail businesses. I worked on it every night for months, testing it with Sophia's inventory, refining and improving it based on her feedback. One evening, a woman named Grace came into the bakery just as I was closing up. She was looking for a last-minute birthday cake, and while I helped her, she noticed my laptop open with code on the screen. "Are you a developer?" she asked, curious. "Not professionally," I admitted. "I am working on something, but it is just a side project." Grace, as it turned out, was an angel investor who specialized in women-led tech startups. She asked to see what I was working on, and I nervously showed her my application. Her eyes lit up as I demonstrated its features. "This has potential," she said. "Real potential. Have you thought about turning this into a business?" With Grace's guidance and initial investment of $50,000, I founded Simple Stock Solutions. She helped me navigate the complex world of business formation, intellectual property, protection, and marketing. I continued working at the bakery during the day while developing my company at night, stretching myself thin but energized by the possibility of creating something meaningful. The first year of business was grueling. I faced rejection after rejection from potential clients who could not see past my age, my gender, or my status as a single mother. But for every 10 doors that closed in my face, one would open. Slowly, I built a client base of local businesses who tried my inventory system and loved its simplicity and effectiveness. Word began to spread. By the time Tyler was 4, Simple Stock had 20 employees and had expanded its product line to include point-of-sale systems and customer relationship management tools specifically designed for small businesses. The growth came at a personal cost. I missed bedtimes when client emergencies arose. I took calls during playground visits. I worked through fevers and flu, afraid that any sign of weakness would cause my fledgling company to fail. Tyler became a fixture at the office, coloring quietly in the corner during meetings, charming investors and employees alike with his thoughtful questions and gentle nature. There were moments of doubt nights when I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. Was I neglecting Tyler in pursuit of success? Was I trying to prove something to my father at the expense of my son? But then, Tyler would do something like carefully save half his cookie for mommy because you work so hard, and I would know that we were going to be okay. He was learning resilience and determination by watching me, just as I had learned from my mother. The turning point came when a major retail chain expressed interest in implementing SimpleStock across all their locations. The contract would mean millions in revenue but required significant expansion of our infrastructure and team. I needed more investment fast. Grace organized a pitch meeting with a group of venture capitalists. I prepared for weeks, refining my presentation, memorizing market statistics, anticipating every possible question. The morning of the meeting, Tyler came down with a high fever. My babysitter canceled. There was no time to find a replacement. I made the hardest call of my career, explaining to Grace that I needed to reschedule. I expected anger or disappointment, but instead, she surprised me. "Bring him," she said simply. "If these investors cannot understand that you are both a mother and a CEO, they are not the right partners for us anyway." I arrived at the meeting with Tyler wrapped in a blanket, drowsy from medication. I set him up on a couch in the corner of the conference room with his favorite stuffed dinosaur and tablet. Before I could begin my presentation, one of the investors, a stern-looking man in his 60s, cleared his throat. "Is this how you run your company, Miss Harper? Bringing sick children to important meetings?" Before I could respond, Grace stepped in. "Ted, this is exactly how she runs her company, with dedication to both her business and her son. The fact that she is here prepared to pitch while caring for a sick child should tell you everything you need to know about her commitment and capability." I launched into my presentation, occasionally pausing to check on Tyler. To my surprise, the investors were impressed not just by my business metrics, but by my ability to balance multiple priorities under pressure. We secured $5 million in funding that day, with Ted becoming one of my strongest advocates. SimpleStock was on its way to becoming a major player in retail technology, and I was on my way to proving that a single mother from a small town could reinvent herself through determination and innovation. What my family had seen as my greatest failure, becoming a single mother at 21, had actually set me on the path to my greatest success. 5 years after founding SimpleStock, the company had expanded beyond my wildest dreams. We now served over 10,000 businesses across the country, from tiny boutiques to regional retail chains. Our revenue had grown exponentially, and industry analysts were taking notice of our innovative approach to small business technology solutions. When a larger tech corporation offered to buy SimpleStock for $25 million, I faced the biggest decision of my career. After weeks of negotiation and soul-searching, I agreed to sell, retaining a position on the board and intellectual property rights for future developments. At 30 years old, I became a multi-millionaire overnight. The first thing I did was buy a beautiful home in Honolulu, a 5-bedroom beachfront property with panoramic ocean views. Tyler, now 9 years old, was thrilled with our new swimming pool and the private beach access. We adopted a golden retriever named Sunny, who became Tyler's constant companion. For the first time in our lives, we had more than enough, and the security of knowing that would never change. The sale of the company had been covered in tech industry publications, but I had always been careful to keep a low profile in the mainstream media. I used my middle name Alexandra professionally and rarely allowed my photograph to be used in press coverage. This anonymity had protected Tyler from unwanted attention and gave us the privacy we valued. About 6 months after moving to Hawaii, I began to wonder about my family. It had been nearly a decade since I had any real contact with them. Tyler occasionally asked about his grandfather and the aunt and uncle he had never met. Despite everything they were his blood relatives, and I did not want to deprive him of that connection out of my own hurt feelings. I hired a private investigator to discreetly check on my family before making any contact. What I learned surprised and concerned me. My father had been forced into early retirement when his bank downsized. Their house was in foreclosure proceedings due to missed mortgage payments. Eleanor, now 23, had developed a serious heart condition requiring expensive surgery that their insurance would only partially cover. Nathan had lost his job after his company relocated, and his wife Margaret was pregnant with their first child. They were in short experiencing the same kind of financial distress I had faced as a young single mother when they had turned their backs on me. My first instinct was to feel a bitter satisfaction, a sense that karma had finally caught up with them. But when I looked at Tyler, so innocent and kind-hearted, I knew I could not allow that bitterness to guide my actions. I established a private foundation through my financial advisors with instructions to anonymously assist my family. The foundation purchased their home from the bank and created a lease agreement that allowed them to stay with nominal rent payments. Eleanor's medical bills were paid in full. Nathan received a job offer from a company that was through several layers of subsidiaries connected to my investment portfolio. None of them knew I was behind this sudden change in their fortunes. The foundation communicated through lawyers and form letters, citing only that a private benefactor had selected their family for assistance based on need. I watched from a distance as their lives stabilized, curious if this security would change how they treated others in need. After nearly a year of anonymous support, I decided it was time for Tyler to meet his extended family. I contacted my father directly for the first time in years, suggesting a visit. His response was cautiously welcoming, though he made no mention of the financial assistance that had saved their home, assuming it was unconnected to me. Our first reunion was awkward. They seemed shocked by how well I was doing, though. I deliberately downplayed my success, telling them only that I worked in technology and was comfortable. Tyler was shy at first, but quickly warmed up to Eleanor, who shared his interest in science fiction. My father seemed genuinely happy to meet his grandson, though Harriet maintained a cool distance, still treating me as the family disappointment. "So, you are some kind of secretary at a computer company?" Nathan asked during dinner, his tone suggesting this was a step down from even the bakery job I had once mentioned in a Christmas card years ago. "I work in software," I replied vaguely. "It pays the bills." "Well, not all of us can be lucky enough to find a decent job these days," he said, glancing significantly at my father. "Some of us have really struggled until recently." I bit my tongue, knowing that his new position had come directly from my intervention. Instead, I asked about his wife and their expected baby, steering the conversation to safer topics. As the visit continued, I noticed how my family had grown accustomed to comfort without earning it. They complained about minor inconveniences in their new home, the one I had saved from foreclosure. Eleanor talked about the college she planned to attend, unaware that her tuition would be coming from my foundation. Nathan boasted about his business ideas, not realizing that the startup capital he was about to receive originated from my accounts. Despite their entitled attitudes, I continued the support, increasing it over time. I told myself it was for Tyler's sake, so he could have relationships with his family. But honestly, part of me was waiting for them to show some growth, some recognition that they had received help when they needed it. The very thing they had denied me. 2 years passed this way. My support for them grew more extensive. I purchased a vacation property that they used regularly. I arranged for Harriet to receive a significant prize from a contest she did not remember entering, which she used for a luxury kitchen renovation. When Eleanor was accepted to an expensive private university, my foundation covered all costs, including a generous living stipend. All the while, they continued to treat me with condescension during our occasional visits. My father would make remarks about how I could have been so much more if I had applied myself, instead of making poor choices. Harriet would criticize my parenting whenever Tyler showed normal childish behavior. Nathan would dismiss my career as some computer stuff while bragging about his own business, ventures all secretly funded by me. I maintained the facade, telling myself that family was family, that Tyler benefited from knowing his relatives, that perhaps someday they would change. But with each visit, each dismissive comment, each criticism of the life I had built against incredible odds, the resentment grew. I was enabling the very behavior I had once been victimized by, and I was beginning to question why. 3 years after selling Simple Stock, I launched a new venture, Nexus Integration, a company focused on creating seamless connections between various business software platforms. The market need was clear. Many businesses were using different systems for inventory accounting, customer management, and other functions, with no way to make them work together efficiently. With my experience and industry connections, Nexus Integration grew even faster than Simple Stock had. Within 2 years, we were serving major corporations and had developed proprietary technology that revolutionized how business software communicated across platforms. When a tech giant offered to acquire Nexus for $58 million, I once again found myself at a crossroads. This time I chose to sell completely, walking away with the full amount and no ongoing obligations. I was now 35 with a net worth that placed me firmly among the wealthiest self-made women in America. Yet almost no one knew. I continued to use Alexandra Harper as my professional name, separating Almira West, the single mother, from Alexandra Harper, the tech entrepreneur. Our life in Hawaii was idyllic in many ways. Tyler, now 12, was thriving in an excellent private school where he had developed a passion for marine biology. Our home had become a sanctuary with stunning views of the Pacific and a spacious home office where I could work on new ideas and manage my investments. I had started dating occasionally, mostly other entrepreneurs or professionals who understood the demands of business leadership. Nothing serious had developed, partly because I was cautious about introducing new people into Tyler's life and partly because my trust had been severely damaged by past experiences. My relationship with Tyler was the center of my world. He had grown into a thoughtful, kind-hearted boy with his grandmother's intelligence, and none of the entitlement I had observed in my half-siblings. We had honest conversations about money and privilege, and I made sure he understood the value of hard work despite our comfortable lifestyle. "Mom," he asked one evening as we walked along our private beach, "why do we live so differently from Grandpa and the others? You own this amazing house and you created 2 successful companies, but whenever we visit them, you pretend to just have a normal job." His perceptiveness did not surprise me, but the question still caught me off guard. I had never explicitly lied to him about our family dynamics, but I had certainly omitted significant details. "It is complicated, sweetheart," I said. "Sometimes people treat you differently when they know you have money. And sometimes it is easier to have relationships when there are not financial complications involved. But you pay for a lot of their stuff, do not you?" he pressed. "I heard Aunt Eleanor talking about her scholarship at dinner last time, but then she was looking at you weird." Tyler was too observant for his own good. Eleanor had indeed been giving me strange looks after receiving a letter about her merit scholarship being renewed, especially when she knew her grades were merely average. "I help them because they are family," I explained. "But I do not want that to be the foundation of our relationship. I want them to know us, not what we can give them." He seemed to accept this explanation, but I knew the questions would continue as he got older. The web of financial support I had created was becoming increasingly complex and difficult to maintain without discovery. As my wealth grew, so did my financial support of my family. I purchased a larger home for my father and Harriet in an upscale neighborhood, arranging the transaction through my foundation, so they believed it was some kind of retirement benefit from his former employer. I funded a business expansion for Nathan that cost nearly $2 million. I arranged for Eleanor to study abroad and provided her with an apartment in the city where she attended university. With each visit home, the contrast between their perception of me and the reality became more stark. They lived in a house I owned, drove cars I had purchased, and enjoyed luxuries I had provided, all while continuing to view me as somewhat unsuccessful, a cautionary tale of poor life choices. Harriet would make comments about my modest rental in Hawaii, unaware that I owned the $5 million property outright. My father would offer unsolicited financial advice, explaining concepts like compound interest to the woman who managed a 9-figure investment portfolio. Nathan would boast about business deals that would have fallen apart without my behind-the-scenes support. Most painful were the comments about Tyler. Harriet would question my parenting decisions, suggesting that a boy needed a father figure, oblivious to the fact that Tyler had more positive male role models through my business connections than Nathan's son would ever have. Eleanor, now planning her wedding to a man whose background check I had quietly run, would ask when I was going to settle down so Tyler wouldn't be disadvantaged. I maintained my composure through these visits, reminding myself that they were Tyler's only extended family. But each time we left, I found myself questioning why I continued the charade. Was I helping them out of genuine family feeling, or was I subconsciously trying to prove something? Was I hoping that one day they would recognize my success and acknowledge how wrong they had been about me? The truth was more complicated than either of those explanations. Part of me wanted to help because I remembered how it felt to have no safety net, to be one emergency away from homelessness with a child depending on me. Another part wanted to be the bigger person, to not perpetuate the cycle of turning away family in need. And yes, a small wounded part of me wanted them to one day realize that the daughter they had dismissed as a failure had become more successful than they could imagine. What I never anticipated was how their continued condescension would eventually push me to a breaking point, or how that breaking point would arrive at a Thanksgiving dinner table in the very house that I had purchased for them. When the invitation came for Thanksgiving at my father's house, my first instinct was to decline. Tyler and I had established our own holiday traditions in Hawaii, usually involving a beachside dinner with friends we had made on the island. But Tyler, now 13, expressed interest in experiencing a traditional Thanksgiving with extended family. "We always do Thanksgiving on the beach, Mom," he said. "I want to know what it is like with Grandpa and everyone else with snow and stuff." I could not deny his curiosity about family traditions, so I agreed to the visit. We flew first class to Portland and rented a luxury SUV for the drive to my father's new home in a gated community, the one my foundation had purchased for them 3 years earlier. The house was impressive from the outside, a 4-bedroom colonial with manicured landscaping and a 3-car garage that housed vehicles I had financed. Inside, it was decorated for the holiday with expensive touches, crystal serving dishes, and hand-embroidered napkins that Harriet proudly pointed out as we arrived. "These came from that home goods store in the city," she said, not realizing I owned a significant stake in the retail chain through my investment portfolio. "They cost a fortune, but the holidays are special, aren't they?" Eleanor and her fiancé, James, were already there, as were Nathan, his wife, Margaret, and their 2-year-old son, Adam. The atmosphere was tense from the moment we arrived, with Harriet making a show of welcoming us to their home as if we were distant acquaintances rather than family. "Almira, you and Tyler can take the guest room upstairs," she said. We had to put Eleanor and James in the better guest suite since they arrived first. "I hope you do not mind the smaller bathroom." "Almira?" I smiled politely, though the irony of being assigned the lesser accommodations in a house I had paid for was not lost on me. Tyler, sensing the underlying tension, stayed close to my side as we settled in. The afternoon progressed with increasingly uncomfortable interactions. Eleanor showed off her engagement ring. A modest diamond that she repeatedly mentioned was real, with sidelong glances at my unadorned hands. Nathan cornered me in the kitchen to explain his latest business expansion, funded entirely by my foundation, though he attributed it to his entrepreneurial instincts. "You should have taken more risks in your career, Almira," he advised condescendingly. "Look at me, I started small, but now I am really making something of myself." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that this visit was for Tyler's benefit, but my patience was wearing thin as the disrespect continued. Dinner itself was when the situation truly deteriorated. We gathered around the formal dining table, a recent purchase that had been charged to one of my accounts. My father sat at the head with Harriet at the opposite end, a physical representation of how they viewed the family hierarchy. Tyler and I were seated at the middle of one side, as if our presence was an afterthought. The meal began with my father saying grace, thanking God for family success and prosperity, without a hint of awareness about the source of that prosperity. As dishes were passed around, the conversation turned to what everyone was thankful for this year. "I am thankful for my thriving business," Nathan declared. "Hard work and smart decisions really do pay off." "I am grateful for my scholarship," Eleanor added. "It just shows that academic excellence is always rewarded." When it came to my turn, I kept it simple. "I am thankful for Tyler and for the life we have built together." Harriet made a small noise that might have been disapproval. "Just the two of you in that little rental in Hawaii. It must be so limited." I said nothing, but Tyler shifted uncomfortably beside me. He knew the truth about our beachfront property and the success I had carefully concealed from my family. "Speaking of limited," my father said, refilling his wineglass, "Almira, do not you think it is time you found a more ambitious career path? Computer secretary work is fine when you are young, but surely you want more security as you get older." "My work is fulfilling," I replied neutrally, "and it provides everything Tyler and I need." "But not what you want," he pressed. "There is a difference between surviving and thriving. Look at Nathan. He has really made something of himself. And Eleanor is engaged to a man with real prospects." The implication was clear in his eyes. I was still the family disappointment, the cautionary tale, the single mother who had thrown away her potential. "Dad, I am doing fine," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. "My career has been more successful than you realize." "Oh," Harriet interjected. "Then why are you still renting? Why do you drive that ordinary car when you visit? If you were truly successful, would not there be some evidence of it?" Tyler looked at me, his expression asking for permission to reveal our secret. I gave a slight shake of my head. This was not how I wanted the truth to come out. "Not everyone needs to show off their success," I said carefully. Nathan laughed. "That is what unsuccessful people say to make themselves feel better. Face it, Almira, you made choices that limited your potential. Getting pregnant so young, raising a child alone, it is no wonder you have not achieved much." Tyler stiffened beside me. "My mom is amazing," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "She has done incredible things." "Of course she has, honey," Harriet said in a patronizing tone. "Raising you all by herself is certainly an achievement of sorts. But, in terms of real-world success, well, you have no idea what real success looks like," Tyler responded, his cheeks flushing. "My mom is one of the most respected people in her industry." "Tyler," I warned gently, not wanting him to reveal too much in anger. My father set down his fork with a clatter. "That is enough. The boy clearly has not been taught proper respect. This is what happens when children are raised without proper discipline, without a father." "Dad," I said, my voice low and dangerous now, "do not speak about my son that way." "I will speak however I please in my own home," he replied, his voice rising. "And I will not be contradicted by a child who has been raised to be as delusional about his circumstances as his mother is about hers." "Delusional," I repeated, feeling something inside me finally snap after years of restraint. "You think I am delusional about my circumstances? Look at you," he continued, gesturing dismissively. "Middle-aged, single-working, some administrative job, living in a rental. And you have the audacity to let your son believe you are some kind of success story. That is not just delusional, it is irresponsible parenting." The room fell silent. Even Nathan and Eleanor seemed uncomfortable with how far our father had gone. Tyler's eyes were bright with unshed tears, not for himself but for me. "You know nothing about my life," I said quietly. "Nothing about what I have accomplished or what I own." "What you own?" My father laughed bitterly. "What do you own besides that cheap car and whatever you brought in those suitcases? You are a disappointment, Almira. You always have been, ever since you got yourself pregnant and dropped out of college. I had such hopes for you, and you threw them all away." I stood up, slowly placing my napkin beside my plate. "Tyler, I think it is time for us to go." "Running away again," my father sneered. "That has always been your solution, hasn't it? When things get difficult, you just disappear." "I did not disappear," I corrected him. "You threw me out when I needed you most." "There is a difference." "And now you want to play the victim," he said, his voice rising further. "Poor Almira, always blaming others for her failures." "I am not a failure," I said simply. "Look around you," he shouted, gesturing at the luxury surrounding us, the home my money had purchased. "This is success. This is what achievement looks like. What can you possibly claim to have that compares to this?" I almost told him then. Almost revealed that everything he was proudly displaying, from the house to the cars to Eleanor's education to Nathan's business, all of it had come from me. But looking at his red face and angry eyes, I knew he would never truly understand or accept the truth. "Let's go, Tyler," I said instead, reaching for my son's hand. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. He pointed at the door, his fingers shaking with rage. "Leave now," he shouted. "Get out of my house if you cannot show proper respect for what your brother and sister have accomplished while you have done nothing with your life." I met his gaze calmly. Gladly I replied, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. Tyler and I walked out with our heads held high, leaving behind a table of stunned faces. As we drove away in our rental car, Tyler finally asked the question that had been building all evening. "Mom, are you going to tell them the truth now? About who you really are? About the house and everything else?" I considered his question carefully as the gated community disappeared behind us. "No," I said finally. "I am going to do something better than that. I am going to show them." We checked into the downtown Marquis Hotel, requesting their finest suite. After the tension and conflict of the evening, I wanted Tyler to have space to process what had happened. The suite offered panoramic views of the city skyline, 2 luxurious bedrooms, and a living area larger than my first apartment had been. As we settled in, Tyler sat on the edge of the sofa, his expression troubled. "Why do they treat you that way, Mom? Why do they think you are unsuccessful when you are literally paying for their lives?" I sat beside him, considering how to explain the complex dynamics at play. Sometimes people need to believe certain stories about others to feel good about themselves. Your grandfather has always needed to see himself as more successful than me. It justifies how he treated me when I was pregnant with you. But it is not true, Tyler insisted. You are more successful than all of them combined. Success is not just about money, sweetheart. True success is about character integrity, how you treat others when they need you. I squeezed his hand. By that measure, I hope I am successful. You are, he said with such certainty that my eyes misted. But they do not deserve your help, Mom. Not after how they talked to you. Not after tonight. I had been grappling with this very question for years. Did I continue supporting them out of genuine family feeling, or out of some misplaced hope for validation? Was I enabling their poor behavior by shielding them from the consequences of their actions? "Do you remember last year when you left your bike unlocked at the beach, even though I reminded you to secure it?" I asked. Tyler nodded, looking confused by the change of subject. "And it got stolen and you were so upset. But instead of buying you a new one right away, what did I do? You made me earn it by doing extra chores and community service," he recalled. "You said it was about learning responsibility." "Exactly. I could have just replaced it, but that would not have helped you grow." I took a deep breath. I think I have been making a mistake with my family. By anonymously solving all their problems, I have been denying them the chance to grow and take responsibility. We stayed up late into the night, talking through the implications of what I was considering. Tyler, despite his youth, offered surprisingly mature insights. By the time we went to bed, my decision was made. The next morning, I woke early and made a series of calls. The first was to Philip Morgan, the attorney who managed my foundation and the various trusts through which I had been supporting my family. "I need to make some changes," I told him, my voice steady with resolve. "I want to discontinue all financial support to the West family effective immediately." "All of it?" Philip asked, clearly surprised. "The housing arrangements, educational funds, business investments, everything." "Almost everything," I clarified. "I want the house transferred fully into Charles and Harriet West's names, but all property tax payments, utility subsidies, and maintenance funds will cease. Eleanor can keep her current semester's tuition payment since it is already processed, but nothing beyond that. All funding for Nathan's business ventures stops today." "May I ask what prompted this change?" Philip inquired carefully. "Let's just say it is time for some overdue financial education," I replied. My next call was to my financial advisor to ensure my own accounts were completely secured and separated from any of the family support mechanisms. Then I contacted the property management company that maintained our Hawaii home to confirm when we would return. The final call was the most difficult, to the head of security at Nexus Integration. "Daniels, I need an information package prepared," I explained. Full documentation of my role as founder and CEO of Nexus and Simple Stock. Before that, including acquisition, details, financial statements, press coverage, everything that establishes my identity as Alexandra Harper. "May I ask why Miss Harper?" he asked. "Family matters," I said simply. "I need to establish my professional identity conclusively for some relatives who have been misinformed." With the calls completed, I joined Tyler for breakfast in the hotel restaurant. He studied my face as I sat down. "You did it, didn't you?" he asked. I nodded. "The appropriate wheels are in motion. How do you feel?" It was a good question. I had been supporting my family financially for 5 years, solving their problems from the shadows, hoping that security might make them kinder, more understanding people. Instead, their sense of entitlement had only grown. I feel lighter, I realized. Like I have been carrying a burden I did not need to carry. "Will they lose everything?" Tyler asked, concern in his voice, despite his anger from the previous night. "No," I assured him. "They will keep the house so they will not be homeless. Eleanor can finish this semester of college. Nathan's business exists even if expansion plans will be on hold. They will have what they have earned and built themselves, just not the extra that I have been providing." "When will they know it was you all along?" I smiled slightly. "They will receive a detailed information package next week after we are back in Hawaii. I want to be far away when they realize the truth." We spent the day exploring the city, deliberately avoiding any locations where we might encounter family members. Tyler was quieter than usual, processing the dramatic shift in family dynamics he had witnessed. By evening, he seemed more settled, asking thoughtful questions about what might happen next. "Do you think they will apologize when they find out?" he wondered, as we packed our bags for an early morning flight. "I honestly do not know," I admitted. People who are deeply invested in a certain view of themselves and others can have trouble accepting information that contradicts that view. They might be angry rather than apologetic, at least at first. "That is messed up," Tyler said with the straightforward assessment of a teenager. "It is," I agreed, "but we cannot control how others react, only how we respond to their actions." As we prepared for bed in our luxurious suite, I felt no regret about my decision. For years, I had allowed my family to maintain their illusions about me while simultaneously depending on my anonymous support. That contradiction had created an unhealthy dynamic for all of us. Mom, Tyler asked as I tucked him in a ritual he still welcomed despite being 13. "Are we still going to see them ever again?" "That will be up to them," I said honestly. "My door will remain open if they want to build a relationship based on mutual respect. But I will not accept the kind of treatment we experienced last night, not for me, and certainly not for you." He nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. "I am proud of you," he said softly, "for standing up for yourself." His words touched me deeply. Through all the challenges and sacrifices, I had raised a son who understood the importance of self-respect and treating others with dignity. That more than any financial success was my greatest achievement. The next morning, we boarded our flight back to Honolulu. As the plane took off, I looked down at the city below, growing smaller with distance. I was leaving behind not just my family, but the last vestiges of the insecurity that had led me to seek their approval despite their mistreatment. My mansion in Hawaii was not just a luxury home, but a symbol of the life I had built through my own determination and ability. Returning there felt like embracing my authentic self, free from the need to diminish my light to make others more comfortable with their darkness. The call came exactly 16 days after our return to Hawaii. I was working in my home office reviewing potential investments when my phone lit up with my father's name. I had been expecting this, though. I was surprised it had taken so long. "Hello, Dad," I answered calmly. "What have you done?" His voice was a mixture of anger and panic. "Everything is falling apart here. The property management company says they no longer manage the house. The utilities are sending past due notices. Eleanor's university called about unpaid tuition for next semester. Nathan's business loan was denied." "What is happening?" I took a deep breath. I stopped the financial support I have been providing to all of you for the past 5 years. There was a moment of confused silence. "What are you talking about?" "What financial support?" "The foundation that purchased your house and has been subsidizing your living expenses. The scholarship fund that has been paying for Eleanor's education. The investment group that financed Nathan's business. All of those entities are controlled by me." "That is impossible," he scoffed, though I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. "Those organizations are legitimate financial institutions. You work as some kind of computer technician." "I sent you a package," I said. It should arrive today or tomorrow. It contains documentation of my actual career and financial status. I am not a technician, Dad. I founded and sold 2 technology companies. My net worth is $58 million. Every luxury you have enjoyed for the past 5 years has come from me. The silence that followed was profound. I could almost hear him trying to reconcile this information with the narrative he had constructed about me. Why, he finally asked, his voice smaller now. Why would you do that and not tell us? I wanted to help my family, I said simply. And honestly, I wanted to see if having financial security would make you kinder people. I hoped that without money, stress, you might become the supportive family I needed when I was young and struggling. But at Thanksgiving, you let me say those things to you about being unsuccessful, about being a disappointment. He trailed off, the implications sinking in. Yes, I confirmed. I let you believe what you wanted to believe. But after that dinner, after the way you spoke to me and to Tyler, I realized I have been enabling behavior that is harmful to all of us. So, this is punishment, he said, a defensive edge returning to his voice. You are cutting us off to teach us a lesson. No, Dad. This is me stopping an unhealthy pattern. The house is still yours. I have transferred full ownership to you and Harriet, but the subsidies that made it affordable, those are gone. You will need to manage your finances based on what you actually earn, just like I had to do as a single mother. The conversation continued in circles, my father alternating between disbelief, anger, and attempts to make me feel guilty. Eventually, I had to end the call, promising to speak again after he had reviewed the documentation I had sent. Over the next few days, the calls came in from other family members. Eleanor was tearful, claiming she would have to drop out of school without the scholarship. Nathan was furious, accusing me of sabotaging his business out of jealousy. Harriet did not call at all, but sent a text message that simply read, "How could you do this to your father? After all he has done for you?" That last message nearly made me laugh with its sheer absurdity. The revisionist history my stepmother had constructed bore no resemblance to reality. In her mind, apparently my father had been a supportive parent rather than the man who had thrown out his pregnant daughter and called her a failure. A week after the initial phone call, my father requested a video meeting. I agreed, setting it up for a time when Tyler would be at a friend's house, unsure of how contentious the conversation might become. When my father's face appeared on the screen, I was struck by how tired he looked. The package I had sent had clearly had an impact. Beside him sat Harriet, her expression carefully neutral. "I received your documentation," he began, without preamble. "Is it all true? You are really this Alexandra Harper person, the tech entrepreneur the business journals call a visionary?" "Yes," I confirmed. "I have used my middle name professionally to maintain privacy for Tyler." "And the $58 million acquisition of Nexus Integration, that was your company?" "Yes. After previously selling Simple Stock for $25 million. He shook his head slowly. "I do not understand why you would hide this from us. Why pretend to be struggling when you were so successful?" "I never said I was struggling," I pointed out. "You assumed that because it fit your narrative about me, you needed to see me as less successful than you to justify how you treated me when I needed your help." "That was a different time," he protested weakly. "We did not have the resources then to support you and a baby." "You had more than I did," I replied evenly. "I was 21 alone, grieving mom with no degree and no job prospects. Yet somehow I managed not only to support myself and Tyler, but to build 2 successful companies and accumulate significant wealth." "The resources were never the issue, Dad. It was your willingness to help." Harriet interjected, her voice tight. "You cannot just cut us off like this. Charles is retired. The property taxes on this house alone are more than his pension. Eleanor will have to leave university. Nathan might lose his business entirely. Those are challenging circumstances," I acknowledged, "just like the circumstances I faced when you turned me away. The difference is that you are adults with decades of work experience, established credit, and a fully paid-for house. Your position is actually much stronger than mine was." "So this is revenge," my father said bitterly. "No," I said firmly. "This is a reset. For 5 years, I have anonymously supported you while you continued to treat me with condescension and disrespect. That arrangement was not healthy for any of us. You developed a sense of entitlement to resources you did not earn, and I enabled that by shielding you from financial reality. What do you want from us? Harriet asked. An apology. Will that turn the money back on? Her mercenary approach confirmed I had made the right decision. I do not want anything from you, I explained. But if you are interested in having a genuine relationship with me and with Tyler, that would need to be based on mutual respect, not financial dependence. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, cycling through accusations, justifications, and eventually tentative acceptance. By the end, my father seemed to understand at least intellectually why I had made this decision. Harriet remained resentful, but was making calculations about their financial future that left little room for continued argument. Over the next few months, significant changes occurred in my family. My father and Harriet downsized to a smaller house they could afford on their retirement income. Eleanor transferred to a state university and took a part-time job to help cover expenses. Nathan scaled back his business ambitions and focused on making his existing operation profitable without expansion capital. 3 months after our confrontation, my father asked to visit us in Hawaii. I agreed, but with clear boundaries about respectful behavior. When he arrived alone without Harriet, I was surprised but relieved. Seeing our beachfront property for the first time, he was visibly stunned. "This is where you live?" he asked, as I showed him the expansive main floor with its wall of windows facing the Pacific. "This is home," I confirmed. "Tyler and I have been here for 5 years. And all those times you visited us staying in our guest room driving a rental car. I wanted our relationship to be about family, not money," I explained. I hoped that if financial needs were taken care of anonymously, we could develop connections based on genuine affection and respect. He was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the ocean. "I failed you," he finally said. "When you were pregnant and needed support, I failed you completely. And then I spent years convincing myself that your struggles were your own fault, that you had made bad choices and deserved the consequences." It was the first time he had acknowledged his abandonment without justification or deflection. "When that package arrived," he continued, "with all the evidence of your success, my first reaction was not pride in what my daughter had accomplished. It was fear about losing the lifestyle I had come to expect. What kind of father thinks that way?" "A human one," I said softly. "We all have flaws, Dad. The question is whether we can recognize them and try to do better." "I would like to try," he said, meeting my eyes directly. "Not for financial support, but because I have missed so much of your life and Tyler's. I would like the chance to know who you really are, not who I assumed you were." It was the beginning of a slow, sometimes difficult reconciliation. There were setbacks and misunderstandings, old patterns that needed to be identified and addressed. But gradually, a new relationship began to form, one based on reality rather than illusion. Eleanor, after her initial shock, proved the most adaptable. She transferred her remaining credits, took on a work-study position, and discovered a resilience she had not known she possessed. When she graduated, she asked if I would consider mentoring her in business, a request that touched me deeply. Nathan struggled the most with the new reality. His identity had been so tied to his role as the successful son that adjusting to more modest circumstances challenged his self-image. Eventually, though, as his business stabilized through his own efforts rather than my funding, he developed a more authentic confidence. The following Thanksgiving, I hosted my family in Hawaii. It was a smaller gathering, as Harriet had chosen to spend the holiday with her sister instead. But my father, Eleanor, and her boyfriend, and Nathan with Margaret and their son, joined us for a beachside celebration that bore little resemblance to the disastrous dinner of the year before. As we sat around the table, the conversation flowed more naturally, without the undercurrents of resentment and judgment that had previously dominated our interactions. When it came time to express what we were thankful for, my father spoke first. "I am thankful for second chances," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For the opportunity to know my daughter and grandson, as they truly are not as I imagined them to be. And for the hard lesson that true worth is not measured by bank accounts or possessions, but by how we treat those who need us most." Looking around that table at the genuine connections beginning to form, I realized that my greatest achievement was not the companies I had built or the wealth I had accumulated. It was finding the courage to be authentic, to require respect rather than acceptance, and to create boundaries that allowed for genuine relationships rather than dependent ones. The road to healing our family would be long with ups and downs along the way. But for the first time we were walking it together, eyes open to the truth about ourselves and each other. That truth, however uncomfortable it had been to confront, was ultimately the foundation for something real and lasting, something no amount of money could buy: genuine family bonds built on mutual respect and understanding. What about you? Have you ever had to make a difficult decision about family relationships? Have you had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life journeys of growth and self-discovery. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their actions. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to live authentically in all your relationships.